Hello. Today I will be featuring another low tier guide, this time featuring the Russian tier 5 DD, the Gnevny. Now, I already made a Izyaslav lower tier commentary, so I didn't bother covering the T4 again. But the T5, the Gnevny, is actually quite interesting because, well, you lose a gun from the Izyaslav, but in return you gain a significant chunk in caliber and penetration power. And base damage also goes significantly up. In fact, the AP goes from 1.8k on the Izyaslav to 2.5k on the Gnevny. Now the reason this is so significant is because at this tier, tier 4 to 7, which you will end up facing as a Gnevny, you can pretty much citadel every single cruiser in the game. It depends somewhat on the distance to your target, but you can citadel them all. You can citadel Yorks, Pensacola's, you can even citadel the Mayoko if you're close enough. Shores you can citadel from far away. And then as we go lower in the tires, it gets significantly easier. Probably one of the hardest ones for you to citadel is the what's it called, the Cleveland, simply because the citadel on that ship is so low below the waterline. So when you try to shoot his citadel, you just get overpens because your shells don't. When you get close enough to actually pen his citadel, your shells don't have enough falling, or they don't fall deep enough to actually pen the citadel itself. They fly over it. So that's probably the hardest ship. But this, when it comes to same tier ships, aka your own tier 5, your AP is monstrously strong against all of them. The Furutaka is best equipped to deal with you because of his armor. The Furutaka is of course the tankiest tier 5 cruiser by far in my opinion, but even that can be citadeled. You just have a harder time doing it. Things like Omahas though, the Omaha style cruiser, which includes of course the Marblehead and the Murmansk, you crush these things if they give you broadside. As we can see here, he gives me broadside, and this is where you start seeing the increased alpha play into it. A citadel suddenly does 2.5k, 2 citadels 5k. And when you get 3 citadels like that and 1 overpen, suddenly you're doing these massive chunks of damage to this poor cruiser, and there's not much you can really do about it. He's just being crushed by it. You see that damage, how quickly he melted? It wasn't anyone else doing that damage, it was your damage. In fact, looking at my damage counter, 24,000 damage dealt at Omaha. So these guns are insanely strong for a DD at this tier. Now, the guns come with their downsides. Of course, the reload is fairly slow, I guess, but the biggest issue really is the turret traverse speed. The default turret traverse speed is 36 seconds. Now, this often prompts a lot of people into speccing expert marksmen, and while it is an option, unless you're going to use this captain on the Gremiashi or the Leningrad, which both have similar type of guns that are extremely slow traverse, I actually don't recommend that. In fact, don't spec into that, and instead save your points for higher tier perks that you will need. For example, I have survivability expert on this guy already, since I've been leveling the same captain I covered in my Dursky commentary. And what you want to be getting is one of the modules. You can pick and choose between modules, and there's one that reduces your reload by 5%. Well, increases your reload really, because it takes you longer to reload when you use it. A lot of people often confuse that perk. They think that, or that module, they think that it gives you both reload and turret traverse, but that's not how they work. You give up some reload speed to get some turret traverse speed. So you give up 5% reload speed, but you gain 15% turret traverse speed. And 5% reload isn't that big of a deal for a ship that reloads as quickly as the Gnevny does, but that 15% turret traverse speed is game-changing when it comes to comfort in playing this ship. But still, you can see just how long it took me to turn my back turrets around to shoot this guy, to shoot this bogue. It took me insanely long, and that's of course the issue, or the biggest downside with this ship. Using the module, you get your turret traverse down to I think 31 point something seconds. It's still not good, but it's a hell of a lot better than 36 seconds, which is pretty much battleship numbers. Now this bogue, I don't bother using AP, because your HE has so much penetrative capabilities against such a thinly armored ship as the bogue, that you can easily HE citadel him, as you can see here. Constant HE citadels. There's no, with AP you're more likely to overpen. Of course, starting fires also prevents him from sending any planes up. Not that I'm getting any fires here, but my HE is melting him quite quickly. And this Kaiser is turning, I guess, to shoot me here, but I used my speed boost to close the distance before he had time to do too much. And sending one volley of torps. Is he gonna do any? Nope, he's still sailing the same way, so I send my second volley. You don't want to panic and send both your volleys out at the same time, because if he suddenly decides to veer off and do some changes in his course, well, you just threw away all your torps. So I tend to send one volley and then I like double check to see, are these gonna hit, does it look good, and then I send my next volley. Dana is close by, so I instantly switch back to AP and instantly citadel him to death as well. Royal Navy cruisers, you crush them extremely hard with this AP. You can because they're so thinly armored and have such a fairly large citadel, you can just crush them. You can citadel them from probably max range. I wouldn't be surprised if you could. I mean, you do have some issues actually hitting it, and in general, it's probably easier just to spam HE because. Mostly because they have no armor, so of course HE does max damage, and trying to get that perfect citadel hit is going to be tricky. My enemy team, I don't know, they have two guys who team killed each other. I don't know what's going on there. Guess they got mad at each other. Too much Sukobliot vodka going on, battles there. But this game at this point is pretty much completely over. The reason I chose this game in particular was to show off just the prowess of these guns, the penetrative capabilities of these guns. It's not every day you look at a game and you realize I'm 7 minutes into the game and I have 18 citadel hits. 18 citadels is something you might expect for a cruiser, Atlanta or Des Moines or something, not exactly something you see on a DD every day. And I thought this really highlighted the point I wanted to make, which was the pure strength of these guns and how easily they crush pretty much everything. If you face enemy DDs, you of course want to kite away, like with all Russian DDs. This teaches you early on, move away from enemy DDs, shoot at them while kiting away. That's how you fight them, especially US DDs that love to get in close and brawl. And your terrible turret traverse of course means that you're not very good at knife fighting other DDs, so you just want to get some distance. Game ends right after this, of course. 108k damage in such a short game, always amusing. 18 citadels. Looking at the team score, 1.3k, not really that much. They didn't really kill any of ours, and they had some team killing shenanigans going on, but I don't really mind. I got to show off exactly what I wanted, the key point of the Gnevny, which is of course these ridiculous guns. In fact, looking at the base damage of the guns, you can see that you don't really end up spamming. You rarely end up doing like with many other higher tier DDs where you shoot tons and tons of shells and you end up doing very little damage with each. Almost every shell will probably yield you some kind of result on this ship, and that's something that's very satisfying, and it does kind of pave the way for future Russian DDs which follow this very same pattern. It is a weak knife fighter though. You don't want to have, it's a weak knife fighter if you get into close combat. In general, you want to sail away from them, where you can keep your guns on one side pointed at the target and you create distance and you shoot backwards towards them. Because as I said, with the terrible turret traverse, any sort of close range battles will favor them. Especially USDDs that have lightning quick turret traverse, they can completely outplay you in close range knife fights. So you want to avoid that. Anyway, let's move on to my recommended build for this ship. Right. I've already unlocked the Gnevny, so I'll have to check out the Gnevny from the tech tree. First things first, you want to get your hull upgrade. It gives you a significant chunk of HP, and you want that additional tankiness. Once you have that, get the range. And then there's the torpedoes. Now, here I want to highlight something that is a bit annoying to me in the wargaming way of labeling things. You see, it only gives us 1 knot of torpedo speed, which makes it seem useless, but in reality, it's most likely giving us a significant chunk of flooding chance. But since the flooding chance of the torps is not displayed in the client, what the average player will see is a completely useless upgrade to skip. We can't be entirely certain of how much flooding chance it gives, but most likely it is significant. You see the same thing often when you upgrade engines, and it looks like the engine only gives us like 1 knot of additional speed. It looks completely useless, even though they gain like 50% more horsepower. But in return, what you usually gain is a massive amount of acceleration or deceleration. Now, of course, these stats aren't shown in the game, so once again, it looks like a really useless engine upgrade. And that's a bit annoying, but you have to keep that in mind, that usually the upgrades are rarely completely useless. Anyway, consumable-wise, repair, smoke in that order if you can afford them. Main armament mod 1. Now here is what I mentioned. You can get the aiming system on the Gnevny because it has such a great turret traverse, but you cannot do this on the Gnevny. On the Gnevny I recommend main battery mod 2 for the faster main battery traverse speed, so you don't have to struggle with those slow turrets catching up and that sort of issues. Propulsion mod, if you're running away you don't want your engine braking because you want to keep that speed up. If you're slowing down in smoke you don't want the engine braking because that will affect how quickly you slow down. It's the best perk for ADD. I don't think you can get the rudder shift on the Gnevny yet. Captain perks, same as I selected for the Gnevny. I mean for the Dursky, preventive maintenance, last stand, I've gotten survivability expert, and I'm of course saving up for AFT, which is the bread and butter of every Russian DD. That's what we're working up towards. In avoid or ignore priority target, I just have that perk because I'm using the Kutuzov to retrain my captain every time. Anyway, that was my Gnevny guide. I hope you guys enjoyed it.